We have evolved to thrive here on Earth. But what if Earth was a place where we could come and visit and be in our full natural habitat? That would be very interesting.
Hello, everyone. This is the Space Cafe podcast, and I'm Marcus. So, what if Earth became not just a place to survive, a place of survival, but a sanctuary where we could return to at some point in the future? In this episode, I'd like to take you on a journey with me into the vision and grander philosophy of none other than the space company Blue Origin, where I'm sitting down with Heather Nelson, who leads the Club for the Future, a club to inspire the next generation of not only space travelers, but the next generation of ourselves, of humankind, where we potentially become an interplanetary species. This is a peek behind the curtain of some of the greatest space companies in the world at the moment, Blue Origin. And the key ideas we will be discussing is, what does it take for us, for humans, to become that species? And what is the plan Blue Origin holds? So, fasten your seatbelts, my friends. This is going to be a wild ride with Heather Nelson. Please welcome the director of the Club for the Future. This is going to be fun. Let's go.
If we want to see the Earth flourish again, if we want to be able to grow our population, we have to be able to expand someplace else. For us, that could be other planets, but we're really thinking about that. Blue Origin and sort of Club for the Future is thinking about that in building a road to space. So actually building the infrastructure that we would need to see millions of people. Really, we always say living and working in space, but I think about it as thriving in space. Where we have a place where we can have, we talked about this before, where we can have, 1,000 Mozarts and 1,000 Einsteins, where we're creating an environment in space where people can really live and thrive. Leaving Earth as this place where we could come and visit.
Like a national park?
Exactly. Yeah.
But let's dive into this in a second. What do you mean, like 1,000 Mozarts, 1,000 Einsteins?
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, I think our Earth is limited in population, right? We are limited in our resources. We are consuming energy at a greater and greater rate every single year. So, at some point in time, probably very soon, if we haven't hit that already, we are going to hit a point where Earth cannot sustain any
Mm,
more human population, and so we're gonna have to go someplace else. And if we enable um, a living environment where we can expand sort of exponentially by 1,000, right? Then we can have this place where we have a much greater human population, and we are able to sustain a place where we could have 1,000 me or 1,000 you or 1,000
interesting.
Mozarts.
Mm,
I don't know if I would
interesting.
want 1,000 me, but
So you mean like this, because then the burden of a limited place is out of the equation, because then we
that's
have
exactly right.
unlimited space. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly right.
Okay. Um, you mentioned Earth as a national park. What could that mean?
Yeah, I mean, imagine, this is an interesting thing because humans were made to thrive here on Earth, right? Like we have evolved to thrive here on Earth. Um, but if we think about Earth as this sort of the place where we could come and visit and be in our natural habitat. We want to make
Mm,
these sort of communities and environments in space where we can thrive and um, we can really live our best lives. but what if Earth was a place where we could come and visit and be in our full natural habitat? That would be very interesting.
Like a cleaned up habitat where
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it's back to the pristine original version of Earth. Is that
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah,
okay?
I mean, that would be really interesting. I haven't thought that far out.
Mm.
I am not the I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily the long-term thinker that Jeff
Of
Bezos is, but
no, of
he's
course.
talked about that as his vision. It would be really interesting to see what that might look like. But I think that's
Interesting.
probably a ways away.
But speaking of Jeff Bezos, his vision and Blue Origin, because it seems like there's two visions at the moment. The one vision is to leave the Earth to go look for a planet slash plan B. And then there is the other vision to make Earth as sustainable as possible to lead better lives on Earth.
Yeah,
So there's two versions. The one, the outward version, the outlook-in version, inward looking version. And
yeah, I think
the latter is the Blue Origin one.
Uh, actually, well, I mean, that's an interesting thing because when we are thinking about, Club for the Future, we're thinking about, teaching students about sustainability and
Mm,
living within the Earth's means. I think these are two that it's not an either or. I think
mhm,
we to work on both concurrently
mm,
and in parallel.
mm,
This is a solving both the challenges that the Earth is facing currently with limited resources
mm,
and possibly, using
mm,
resources from space, but
mm,
and also um, building infrastructure in space
mm,
where humans can go and live. Um, I think this is they are sort of two sides of the same coin. We're going to have to do
mm,
both.
mm. Let's talk about the club.
Yeah.
The what is its primary mission?
Yeah. So, Club for the Future is Blue Origin's K-12 STEM education nonprofit. Our big goal is to inspire and mobilize this next generation that is coming up to pursue STEAM careers, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, to really help us solve future challenges for both the Earth and living and working in space. So when we think about Blue Origin and this very big mission of having millions of people living and working in space, we think about there are there are sort of Jeff thinks about it like there are three gates that we need to
Mm,
accomplish in order to see that grand vision. The first gate is lowering the cost of access to space.
mm,
Right now, it's so expensive for us to
mm,
get off planet, and we really have to lower that cost. So, Blue Origin has been working on that for a couple of decades. Really, reusable rockets and reusable engines. So that we can lower that cost. We're using materials over and over and over again.
mhm,
Again, are sustainable. The second gate that we need to sort of get over is really utilizing and harnessing in space resources. So, if we are going to live off planet, we're probably going to start someplace
mhm,
like the moon. We need to be able to um, use the resources on the moon or, say, on an asteroid to create water and propellant and the things that we're going to need to actually survive in those environments. And then because Jeff is such a sort of long-term, visionary, the other thing that he knows that we're gonna have to do is inspire this next generation because the challenges that we are solving now, they're not just gonna get solved in your lifetime or maybe even our
mm,
our our children's lifetime, but it's gonna be multiple generations that are gonna need to work on this. So we really have to prepare that next generation, so that we can pass the baton off to them and they can work on some of this. and club is such an interesting thing. So we've got o- what's neat about this is we've got hundreds of external partners, other nonprofits and other STEM organizations that are working with us to do this, right? It's not just Club for the Future, thank goodness. Us and our
First of
team of three. But the other great resource we have is our 10,000 Blue Origin employees. We call them club ambassadors, and boy, I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to sort of get out and really talk to kids and inspire that next generation and show them what an engineer today looks like. And not just engineers, right? We have all sorts of people working here at Blue Origin, including accountants and HR people and business people. And so all of our Blue Origin employees get to go out and talk to kids, which is great.
Fantastic. So that means engineers, Blue Origin employees uh, venture out into classrooms and whatnot and talk about what they do all day.
Yeah, yeah, we can do that virtually. We do it in person. We go to events. We go to, I mean, anything from like, our engineers they ask me all the time. Our employees ask me all the time, like, well, what can I do? And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? You can like anything that you can do to connect with this next generation, with what we will call K-12 kids who are,
Hmm.
somewhere between 0 and 18. Um, and then, of course, college, higher education students as well. But we're really focused on that, under 18 group. They can do everything from, being in their neighborhood, getting a group of kids together to write some postcards to space to inspire them
Mm,
about what it might look like to live and work in space. So
mm,
everything from that to visiting, like more formally visiting like a classroom where you've got a group of 30 students and maybe you're teaching something, to working with a group of educators. So these are, basically teaching the teachers. So working with teachers to inspire them, and then they go into their classroom and use all the resources that we have to inspire the kids that they see every single day.
mm. I like the when you mentioned the STEAM versus the STEM education. Where that does that come from Blue, or is this a terminology that's widely used?
Yeah, that's it is widely used. I think we adopted it just a couple of years ago. We were really focused on sort of that STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. Um and we started talking about it. If we want to see people thriving in space, we are
Mm,
going to need artists, right? And
mm,
art is in everything we do every day, even from the clothes that you and I are wearing to that
mm,
really cool piece of artwork in your background. That's in order for us to I think see our or be our best selves. We're going to need art all around us. We're going to need chefs and people who design both art and clothing. And I mean, even our computers, right? This software that you and I are using today
mm,
is created by user
mm,
designers, right? So we're going to need all of those folks in
mm,
space as well. And so really thinking about what that looks like to have full inclusivity in space and including that art. So that's a big thing for us. And art can be art and music, they're so inspirational, especially for kids. So they see that, and maybe we utilize art and music to actually inspire them to do something in space. So
mm,
we added the A, I guess just a couple
mm,
of years ago, we really started focusing on that.
mhm. Love it. It takes a little bit the steam out of the whole thing, makes it more literally, literally. I bet you have a bunch of. So, if someone asks you, "Tell me about the club. Tell me about your favorite stories, your favorite best practice examples from, I don't know, students, young kids. What is it that you would want to share?"
Yeah, I I think there's a couple of lessons that even I've learned um, while working for Club for the Future. Uh, which has just been a really, really fun. It was a little bit of a career pivot for me, going from more of a science and engineering, more of a technical background, to really running a running a nonprofit that
Mm,
focuses on kids. Uh, I don't get to go out and see kids as much as probably I
mm,
would like to. That's really my job, is to
mm.
enable our employees to be able to
Okay.
do that
Mm-hmm.
as seamlessly as possible, like
Mm,
really empower them to do that. But
mm,
that said, I do get to get out with students. I think there's a couple of things that I've learned. Kids are way, way smarter than we give them credit for.
mm.
I think adults think that we know so much, and boy, all you need to do is get in front of a group of K-12 students and ask them some questions. They are they also are so very creative. Every single
Mm.
time I do an activity with kids, I'm just a little bit blown away by what they are thinking about. Um, when we ask them what it might look like to live and work in space, they have an infinite number of ideas. And
Wow.
that's really, really, it's so funny because my job is really to enable our employees to go out and inspire students. But I think the opposite happens just as much.
Wow.
Our
Wow.
employees come back and they are just
Equally inspired.
energized. Yeah, they are inspired, they're energized, and that's been really, really fun to see. Um, Also, kids are, they don't have a lot of ego, and so they're just like sponges. They wanna learn everything, and it is so much fun. I'm always a little bit, I guess maybe I'll just share. I'm a true introvert. So getting in front of a loud group of people is a little bit intimidating for me.
Mm,
I always have way more fun than I think I'm going to when I go to a school with, 120 kids and they're all
mm,
crowded around and we're doing
mm-hmm,
some dry ice experiment and they're like,
mm,
"This is the coolest thing ever." Yeah, they're so great. Um, they also, gosh, kids are so great. They also don't know, they don't have the constraint of thinking that something is impossible because they haven't seen it yet.
interesting.
And
Interesting.
so, yeah, so when we get in a room of students and we're like, well, what do you want? What could you do in space? They come up with these amazing ideas. My favorite has, the last time I was chatting with a kid, I was like, well, what do you want to do, when you maybe get a little older, whatever. And he was like, I want to own a pizza shop. And I was like, you could do that in space. And he was,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Zero gravity pizza.
yeah, exactly. I mean, pepperoni in space. Yes.
Fantastic. The more you talk about this and the more you share your observations, the more it breaks my heart to see that perhaps we're asking the wrong questions in traditional education. We're asking adult questions resulting in grades, resulting in addition of points and whatnot. So maybe it's the wrong questions altogether we're asking. So
Oh,
we're
oh, Marcus,
wasting we're wasting talent. It's
you and I could
heartbreaking.
probably talk for hours about um,
Yeah.
our education system. Maybe even specifically in the United States. But that I guess I think about it as you do you do what you can do in the time that you have. And so if we have an hour with a group of 10-year-olds, we're going to tell them all this really neat stuff about space.
Mm,
We're going to show them what we've been working on, and then we're going to ask them to use their imagination to see what's
Mm,
possible.
mm,
Um, so me and my small team of 3 are probably
mhm,
not gonna change the American education system, but,
mm,
oh, if there are a couple of students in that room that get inspired about what we might say or,
mhm,
educated on what space might look like and some of the possibilities, um, I would call that a day well spent.
mm.
But,
Absolutely.
yeah, the other thing that we think about a lot at Blue Origin, um before I worked for Club for the Future for Blue, I helped run our internship program,
Mhm,
and that was a really interesting experience also. So that's with higher education students. Um, so students who are either in college or working on uh, some other like hands-on sort of technical degree. And I mentioned that we always looked for students who were they were obviously in college, so they were in the classroom, but they were designing, building, and testing things, mechanical systems, sort of on the side. So they were building rockets or boats or cars or bikes or it doesn't matter. Just getting that hands-on experience.
mm, mm. Is
If
that
I could
at
change.
school? At school or
Yeah.
at school still? Okay,
Yep,
okay.
at school or usually through school because it's something that,
Yeah,
usually those things are relatively expensive and the tools are
yeah.
expensive. So there are a lot of universities and actually a ton of like middle schools and high schools that have what we call like a maker space where students can go in and
Yes.
actually build things. Um, if I could do anything with sort of the broader education system, it would be to enable that opportunity for every single student in the United States,
Mm,
where they could
mm,
actually, if they were interested, where they
mm,
could, just like students go to art class or they go to woodworking class, and also have this place where they could um, really start to engineer at a younger age and build
mm,
things, and then make it okay that they can break them and then redesign them and
mm.
rebuild them.
I love this idea. Um,
Great. You and I are gonna change the education system.
would love to. Yeah, I'm game. I'm game. Here's
Right
my
on.
number.
Great.
Is this also a recruiting tool for Blue to find new talent?
The Club for the Future?
Yes. Yes.
No, no, not really. Um,
Okay.
like I said, we are more, we're Club for the Future is more focused on, um, K-12, although, now I've just said this like hard no, and now I'm started thinking about it. I mean, there's a really good chance that one of our
Someone.
engineers,
Yeah.
yeah, that will have, one of our employees will have gone out and talked to a group of students about, uh, who we are and what we do and the opportunities we have. And there's going to be students out there that are like, that's what I want to do. So
Exactly.
yeah, I take my
So,
answer back. I'm going to say yes.
yeah. I
it's
mean,
not,
like,
it's not why we do what we do, but I guess the whole idea of club is to inspire and mobilize these students
yes.
to pursue these careers. So yeah, some
Yes.
of them will probably work at Blue
So
Origin. Some
so why not someone calls you and says, "Hey, it's Paul from 10 years ago. Remember? I got my degree right now. Got a job for me."
great.
Why not? Why not?
Terrific. I love
Um,
that. It's funny that you say that because I worked for the intern program at Blue for about 9 years. Um and there were absolutely students I met in their freshman year of college who eventually came to Blue Origin as interns and are now working here full time,
yeah.
um, and are still at Blue. And now I guess they're not really even early career
Mm,
engineers anymore.
mm. Tell me what is it? like at Blue Origin? What is it to work at Blue Origin and for Blue Origin under that
No,
visionary leader?
it's oh boy. I well, now we sort of dip into, as when I ran the internship program and university partnerships for Blue, I got asked this
Mm,
question all the time by students.
mm,
Um, it's hard to answer and not get a little emotional about.
mm,
Working for Blue is a dream come true for me. I was a spacehead my whole life. So, focused on either astronomy, sort of the science side of things, or the engineering side of things. And worked for NASA for a little while. And just the idea of space and rockets have captured
mm,
they are my passion.
mhm,
So, when I learned about Blue Origin and I learned about Jeff and his vision for the future and what it what it what he wants to see happen, coming to work for a company where I share that passion for our mission is incredibly fulfilling. It's absolutely amazing. On top of that, which is I mean, I can't even believe I've never worked with kinder, smarter people ever.
mm,
The folks at Blue are just, they're just such interesting people. Not only are many of them, designing, building, testing, operating rockets, or the folks that are supporting that as a function, they are also just really interesting people. So many of them have side hobbies and things that, and I think probably for me, those things match a lot of my interests as well. So working here is so very, very interesting to me. I can't tell you how many times I've said, oh boy, this job is really hard. We also move faster than any other place I've ever worked in academia or industry or government. We move very, very quickly. We make
what does that
decisions very fast.
what does that mean? What does that mean?
We fit a lot into a day. We don't, there's not a lot of downtime for us. We run very, very lean. So we don't have, you know, like compared to places that I've worked before, we would probably have maybe double the number of people doing the
Mm.
the same amount of work that we do here at Blue.
So how's that
Um,
possible? Where does the efficiency come from?
So when we think about Blue Origin, we simplify wherever we can, we automate wherever we can. So I would say we were very early adopters of AI. So
Mm,
utilizing tools to help us do our jobs faster and more efficiently. The other really neat thing we do at Blue is we make decisions very quickly as long as they are decisions that we can always turn around and go back on and go down another path. We are not
mm,
afraid to make mistakes as long as we don't make the same mistake twice.
mm,
And I think I've worked other places where we sort of like churn in this decision making because we don't want to make the wrong decision or we don't want to spend money on this thing that we maybe aren't totally sure about. But at Blue, we're willing to actually try those things. I can't tell you how many times at Blue I've said, well, let's just pilot this and see how it goes. Um,
mm.
Either it'll work very well for us or we'll turn around, and take a left instead of a right. So, and the entire employee base is empowered to do that, which is that is really fun for me. I like a I like an environment where I can make decisions quickly, but um but I'm
Also
not
correct course.
but I'm also able to correct course without sort of reprimand. Um
Mm,
Again, as long as it's not the the same mistake twice. We don't want to do
Mm,
that.
mm.
Yeah.
What is the because you mentioned you've been with NASA and other institutions. What is the key difference other than the ones you just mentioned? But what is it that you would say this makes Blue different?
Yeah. I think the other thing we, when I was, gosh, I I don't want to, um, speak poorly about NASA because my time there was absolutely
Mm,
amazing. Um, they are they are working on new technologies, much the same that we are at
mhm,
Blue. I would say at Blue, there's just a little bit, uh, I guess we would call it red. There's just less red tape. There's,
mm,
there are fewer people in between, um, what we wanna do and sort of getting approval for that.
mm,
Um, we
mm,
we, we have a delegation of authority at Blue Origin that
mhm,
reaches way down into the organization so that we are empowered to make every single person at Blue Origin is empowered to make decisions. Um,
mm,
and when I worked for NASA, but through a higher education
mm.
institution, so it was like double the approval
Right,
process that
right.
I had to go through in order to sort of um, spend money on programs that we thought were really impactful. And we don't have that problem at Blue.
Hmm. What does it mean that every employee has the power to make decisions? Like, for example.
Yeah. So, um, like we'll take my team as an example.
Mhm,
Um, when we want to partner with someone, if we see a really neat program that we want to try and support and partner on, we talk about it as a team of three. And then,
mm,
as long as it's not this like high level of spending,
mhm,
we just do it. Like we just
mm.
dive in
It
and
just
and
mm,
and do that partnership. Yeah.
mm,
Um, and once it gets to sort of a certain level, then then I talk to my boss, and he's usually like, "Yeah, that sounds great,"
mm,
but it doesn't have to
mm,
go any higher than that in order
mm,
for us to move forward and try and be as impactful as quickly as possible.
mm. I'm very curious, and thank you for answering my questions.
Yeah, this is so
Because this
interesting to talk about. I
no,
love
it's
it.
no, it's really interesting because I also see my role in this show to find solutions and improvements for our audience wherever they may be. So maybe it's not the space industry. What I've heard, but please do correct me, is that Jeff Bezos is always the last one to talk in a meeting
That's
because
correct.
he listens first.
Yep.
So perhaps you can elaborate on this and talk about your own meeting culture.
Yeah.
Perhaps I can take something from your wisdom.
Maybe. I should say I'm not in a large number of meetings with Jeff.
Yes.
So I only know sort of what I've heard um sort of secondhand. But that is true. What's interesting about that is because Jeff does that, our senior leadership team does that, and they train our managers to do that. So when I am in a meeting with my team of individual contributors, I also let them speak first and tell me what their opinion is before I give mine.
Hmm.
And that's I I I think if there's one management thing that I've learned that has really just to I've spent a lot of time um as a manager learning how to listen. That is it's
Mm.
probably my best skill set. And to just wait. Uh I'm always interested in meetings that if you if you just pause for like 5 seconds, it's amazing what people will say in that amount of time. They'll give a
Yes.
more maybe a little more honest opinion.
Hmm.
You probably use this every day, right? Just wait for people to say something more. Um, so I think that's probably one of my biggest takeaways. But when we're talking about what the difference between, I mean, I think you really asked the right question. Maybe the difference between like NASA or other places. I worked at a university. The difference between that and blue is this really this empowerment to not only make decisions but also make mistakes.
Mm.
Um, and to I mean, really just not be punished for that. Like, okay, well, we tried that. That didn't work. Let's move to something else. Um, Obviously, you don't want to make you don't want to make flippant.
Human.
I mean, I think we sort of talked about this. You don't want to make
Mm.
flippant decisions, but you
Mm.
want to make the the best possible decision that you can in the time
Yes.
that you have allotted, right? So it's sort of the 90% rule. You get like, you know, 90% of the information that you really think you need, because the trying to get the other 10% of that information is going to take you twice as long, right? So you try and make a really informed decision,
Mm.
but you don't beat yourself up over the fact if it doesn't work and you need to try something else.
Mm.
Also, we are I say that I don't want it to sound like we just throw money around sort of, without being intentional about that. We do not do that. And one of our
Mm.
leadership principles is to be resourceful,
Mm.
and to really, really use our budget where we'll have the most impact. So we don't just do things to, like, oh, let's spend money here or there
Mm.
or wherever. We
Mm.
don't do that. We're very intentional about it. But again, we're also not afraid to make mistakes.
What is the over, because you already mentioned Jeff's vision, what is the overall vision above everything
Yeah,
that
it
you're
is.
going
It
to
is.
bed with, bed with, and wake up the next day again? What's the
Yeah.
one thing?
Yeah, it's always about building this road to space, to building um, the infrastructure needed where we can see millions of people living, working, and thriving in space. I, I, I think about that when I think about every time I say that, I think of. Are you familiar with Gerard O'Neill? He wrote a book called The High Frontier, and it's all about. They're called O'Neill colonies, which are basically like
Hmm.
cylinders in space. Then they've
Those,
got,
yes, yeah.
oh gosh,
The,
there's
living on the inside of those rings, right?
that's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. For anybody who's listening, I would say go Google O'Neill Colony
Yes.
to see what that looks like. When I think about that, um, that's sort of the ideal vision of what Blue Origin is trying to get to.
Is is something like this realistically achievable within our lifetimes, like you
Mhm.
and myself, or is this
Mhm.
something beyond?
Yeah, no, because and that's why we have Club for the Future.
Mm. Yes, exactly. We need that those next generations to pull
It
that
turns
off.
out. Yeah, I don't boy, as much as I would like to be able to say yes to that, I don't think we're gonna
Yeah.
see an O'Neill colony in my lifetime. Um, but maybe the next generation. Yes.
Mm. Speaking of which, when I think of Blue Origin is mainly the rockets to me, like because in the public face, it's the rockets you get to see. Um, as opposed to other leaders, you have a more secluded leader who is not so present. But this is all I see from Blue. But what else is there? What what other space endeavors is Blue working on other than the rockets and the O'Neill shapes?
We have a whole team at Blue Origin, which is lunar permanence, advanced technologies, advanced concepts. We don't. We don't. I would say, sort of communicate as much about those teams or sort of market what we're doing on those teams, but they are 25% of Blue Origin, and they are
Mm,
one of the companies we just joined with last year or the year before is Honeybee Robotics. They
mhm,
just landed some of their instruments on the moon with the Blue Ghost lunar lander.
mhm,
So they are working on what it might look like to drill into the lunar surface, collect
mm,
regolith, do some regolith sampling.
mm,
Um, so we also have a whole team of folks working on orbital habitats. So
mm.
like O'Neill colonies. Um, Space vehicles. We don't necessarily we're not marketing those sort of ideas yet because we're in the earlier stages of that. It's really
You
exciting
mentioned
stuff.
it is. Heather, you mentioned that you're a space buff yourself. What does all that include? Science fiction literature, science fiction movies, whatever. Is this your hood?
Yes, all of that. Telescopes. I oh gosh, I will consume it's sort of space information. I just love it. I think the part of what I do is the reason that I do it is so that kids out there maybe get a broader understanding of what they can do when they're adults. If we can show them some of these things, it may change their lives. I was
Mm,
5 when I saw the rings of Saturn through a telescope. I'm like, that was
mm.
it. Okay, great. This is what I want to do. Um, and what's interesting about that, I think for me, is that while I've maybe gotten a little off track here and there, the idea of space has guided me since I was a kid, and it has created this incredibly fulfilling career. Um, and so if we can if we can do that with other kids, um, I think that that could create just a really interesting and fulfilling future for them.
Speaking of sci-fi, I bet you can't wait to watch Project Hail Mary on the big screen.
That was maybe one of my favorite books, a
Isn't it
couple of years ago.
incredible? Andy
I
Weir.
Andy Weir. Weir. I mean, The Martian is one of my favorite movies. I cannot wait to see what they do with that book.
They just finished filming. It's on tape.
Also, I am a huge movie fan. I love movies. So the fact that they're taking sort of like my, two favorite, well,
They
two of
just
my favorite things, putting them together.
fan- fantastic.
Oh my
How
gosh.
about you? How about yourself, Heather? When the call came, would you go into space?
This is the running joke in my house right now. Well, no, this has been the running joke in my house since I started at Blue Origin. Obviously, my husband knows that I'm crazy about space.
Mm,
Fortunately, he was kind enough to be dragged literally across the entire country so that I could come and take my dream job with Blue Origin. So we have a joke. I get the incredibly awesome opportunity to go to our New Shepard launches relatively frequently.
mm.
Um, we have an agreement in our house that if I'm at a New Shepard launch and someone just miraculously says, "Hey, there's an extra seat. Do you want to get
An
in?"
empty seat.
An MTC. I don't even have to call. Like, I don't even call.
Mm.
I just
You
get
got your
on.
go bag ready.
I can't imagine. We've flown two Blue Origin employees as astronauts at Blue, and to hear them talk about that experience and how it changed their life and what it meant, the overview effect is real. being able to look down on the planet and see the curvature of the earth
Mm,
and understand that there are no borders, there are no fences. You see the earth nearly as a whole, and how that changes your perspective. Um, and how we got this very, very thin atmospheric
mm.
layer and the earth looks so fragile. Uh, I think being able to see that in person, it might break my brain, but it would for sure change change me forever.
Wow.
I don't know how I can get more passionate though. I'm sort of known for that around blue. So yeah,
How f-
I might just be next level.
how far, Heather, out there would you go? Would the moon be your farthest destination, or would you go even further?
Can I take my dog?
Well, we have seen dogs in space so far, so why not?
We have. Yeah, I think if I'm so human in that respect.
Mm,
If I could take the people that I love with me,
mm,
um, including my
why
dog,
not?
because I miss her when I'm away from her for like, 2 days. Uh,
Wow.
then maybe I would consider going on a very, very long voyage. Um, if I can't, then I think I'd want to stick relatively closer to home. I like this
Okay.
idea of an O'Neill colony.
There's a question attached to my question. Because I initiated a playlist on Spotify. It's called the playlist for the aspiring space traveler.
Okay.
And for the very long journeys that quickly get boring because they're very long, what one piece of music would you want to bring on that journey?
Oh my gosh, this is so hard. Uh, in addition to maybe being crazy about dogs and movies and space, uh, I love, love, love music. We see a lot of live music. It's part of the reason, actually, the idea that this dream job at Blue Origin was in Seattle, which
Mm,
has both incredible scenery, but also an amazing music history and live music
absolutely. Mm.
scene. Yeah. Um, boy, that was really there's no possible way gonna be able to
Yeah.
answer this.
You know,
Um,
we got the weight problem, so it's just one tune you can pick.
oh, golly, probably, one of my favorite, sort of pieces of music of all time is Vivaldi's Four Seasons.
Mm,
And I
mm,
think that's really interesting because if I'm out in space, that that piece of music in me, it evokes I see what it looks like when the trees bloom in spring and
mm,
I hear um what it feels like for there to be snow. And I think if I
mm,
were going to take anything in space where I weren't sort of in this earth environment, I would
mm.
wanna take a piece of music with me that helped me remember what it felt like to have 4 seasons. So I think I would take that.
Wonderful. Heather, now and then you go into coffee places to energize yourself with a strong shot of coffee. Now, I challenge you to share a strong shot of inspiration with me, an espresso for the mind, so to say. And you can pick whatever kind of topic you want to pick. What would be
Uh-huh.
your shot of inspiration you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would talk about the overview effect, and I would talk about getting people to try and envision what it would look like, not standing here on planet Earth, but floating above planet Earth, and
Mm,
to see the Earth in this much bigger context. Especially now in sort of our political climate where I feel very divided from the rest of the
mm,
world.
mm,
Um, but to get out of that headspace and look at the earth as one place, um,
mm.
and one humanity, and think about how to solve our challenges long term as a human race and not just be focused on um, what you can do for yourself right now. Think bigger.
Heather Nelson, thank you so much for taking that time with me.
Marcus, I mean, I'm going to be energized for the rest of the day. I'm just going to walk around and think about everything that we talked about.
There's quite a bit to unpack, at least for me, in all of this. Unpacking meaning for this transition into a new version of humankind, we will need to do quite a bit of homework. Homework meaning to do a little bit of soul searching and mind searching, if you will, as to how we do things currently, and perhaps as to how they should potentially be done in the future, because there's quite a bit that needs readjustment these days, as I think you will all agree. So how do we educate ourselves in the future? How do we live a sustainable life? What does it mean? What does Earth mean to us as humans? Take the overview effect idea. And how do we see our own planet? I like the sanctuary idea quite a bit. And so, as always, my friends, if this is something you would love to have more discussion about, why don't you share it with someone who you think could take benefit from listening to those ideas? Spread the word far and wide. And, well, if you give us a review or a rating on your favorite podcast platform, you would do us a huge benefit, because this helps us get the show out into the wild, even or a lot further out into the wild. So thanks for sticking around, my friends, and talk to you in 2 weeks from now. Bye-bye.